Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to deal with the mental health aspect of things, specifically within the BAME community, which stands for Black, Asian and Minority Ethnic, but also within Islam as well, because it can be slightly different for Muslims. I do have a degree in biomedical studies, and I've also got a PGC, which means I'm a qualified teacher, but my further specialism was actually in special educational needs, disability, social and emotional and mental health and well-being, and I do have a master's in that as well. So that's everything that I do with mental health. I am a mental health champion at the university that I work in, where I'm also a Muslim chaplain. I'm also Secretary of Essex Mind and Spirit, which is a voluntary organisation which deals with mental health and how spirituality can help with mental health. Things like prayer, meditation, fasting, things like that. And I would say that since the past 22 years as a special needs coordinator, I have had to deal with mental health. I've sat in on all the looked after child meetings, done lots of counselling for parents of children with special educational needs as well. So many aspects really of mental health, which has definitely been on the rise. I would say when I first started my job as a special needs coordinator, there was maybe 2 counsellors we would get in for 2 children in the school, and then by the time I left and then became a chaplain, I would say we had at least 40 children in a whole school of 200 children who were having counselling of some kind. So it's definitely, from my own experience, risen over the years, but lots of good things have happened as well. I think the stigma is definitely going in all communities on the whole. I also run a women's group for women from the BAME community who suffer from mental health, stress, anxiety as well. And we do lots of fun lunches, we have speakers in, we have craft activities. When I started that group about 7 years ago, if I said the word mental health to the ladies, they would all turn around and say, oh, we're not coming because we don't have mental health. Okay, and I would get that reaction, black and white, so I never used to say the word mental health. But now, 7 years down the line, I very happily tell people it's about mental health, and we get mental health nurses coming in and speakers and things, and everybody's fine about it. So even within the BAME community, definitely the stigma is going now, and people are more readily coming out and telling us that they've got mental health problems and things. Okay, so we're going to talk specifically within the Black, Asian and Minority Ethnic experience of disability of any kind, including mental health, but within Muslims as well. And I'm going to start off with saying that it was actually Muslims who recognized mental health. The reason is it is in the Quran, and it does tell you lots of things about mental health. There's stories about mental health. For example, it tells us about Mary when she was about to have Jesus, and she was really, really upset because people were pointing their fingers to her and saying that she's a prostitute and she's a bad woman. How can she have a baby when no man has ever touched her? And she ran away, and there's a verse in the Quran that says that she sat down and said to God, oh, if I could, how could I have seen this day if only you could take me away before I could see this day, she says to God. Basically, she wanted to commit suicide, and then God helped her and gave her courage and all the rest, and she had her baby and then took him back to where he was supposed to be as well, to the land where everybody was pointing their fingers at her. So there's many, many verses in the Quran. It also tells you in the Quran that truly in the remembrance of God do hearts find rest. So it tells you that in the Quran, that religion is the way to help you find rest and peace in your hearts. In so many verses it says you will lead a depressed life as well if you don't sort of focus on God, because through God you find peace and things like that. So that's the Islamic point of view. Jinns are mentioned. I don't know if anybody knows about jinns here. Evil spirits. They do exist in Islam. The devil is an evil spirit as well. So there are things about them influencing you, and any bad that anybody does is linked with evil spirits. Again, England has shied away from that and moved well away because of the lack of religion with Parliament and things. But you just need to go back in time, and evil spirits did exist. Look at all the horror films, exorcisms and all that. And even in today's world, reverends, yes, they go out and they do perform exorcisms. I'm in touch with lots of reverends. They go out and they perform exorcisms in people's houses. It's just kept quiet and nobody knows. They go and they bless houses, don't they? And things like that. So yes, there is all of that as well. So we will talk about all of that. Within all the stigma that we will talk about. I'm going to start off very positively, and I'm going to put on a video of the very first psychiatrist and the very first psychologist. They were all Muslims, because remember what I said in the previous talk, that the first doctor was a Muslim, and they were well into science and medicine because of some of the things mentioned in the Quran. So here's the video. That's very interesting. That's all about this man Al-Balkhi, who was way ahead of his time, and even things like OCD he had diagnosed and written about in his book, which is actually quite a recent thing, isn't it, really, when I look at some of the terms like OCD and things. And he also connected the mind and the body for the first time, and it was all really as a result of what was in the Quran. And because of all of these doctors, the very first hospital was opened in Damascus in 707 by a caliph called Abdul Malik. And the first public hospital was opened in Baghdad during the Abbasid Caliphate of Harun al-Rashid in the 8th century. And Islamic hospitals maintained special wards for the insane. So even in those days, mental health was recognized, and special wards for the insane were opened up. And did you know that mentally ill were treated with supportive care, drugs and psychotherapy? And that was actually at a time when in Britain, anybody who had mental illness was burnt alive in those days, because they were thought of as witches and sorcerers. Yet a curative approach was taken for mental illness for the very first time in history. Islamic cities maintained an insane asylum where patients were treated at no charge. And Islamic system for treatment of the insane excelled in comparison to Europe. And that information is actually referenced from the Science Museum here in Britain, so that's where that information is from. So that's how it was. But unfortunately, because of the link of mental health with evil spirits and with jinns and that kind of stuff, there is stigma within the BAME community and within the Islamic community because of that. And it was exactly the same in Britain. You just need to look back at the Time to Talk campaign, which came out about 10 years ago, where there was a real push to get rid of stigma in this country, whereas our home countries are still developing, so they haven't got to that point yet, although it is getting better. Any ideas why mental health is on the rise? You must all know this in your jobs. Why is there a rise in mental health?
It's being picked up more.
Yes, that is one of them. Like I said, there are so many categories of need nowadays. There's labels for everything. The labels didn't exist in the olden days. Yes, that is one of them. Good. Anything else?
Arguably, a decline in religion and spirituality.
Yep, good. That's a good one as well. There is. So the connection isn't there with something. Good, well done. Any more? You're doing really well, by the way. Really, really well. Come on. Someone mentioned something else earlier on as well. The food, remember? Everything's artificially made nowadays, all genetically modified food. It's not compatible with our natural body system, and it is having an effect on our mental health. It is, it's proven fact. I've done a talk on food and stress recently at the university. More processed food, preservatives, artificial colours, all of that is making more mental health. The more colouring there is, does it not make the children hyperactive? A glass of Coke, they're hyperactive. Artificial foods, genetically modified food is not compatible with our natural systems. Cancer is on the rise because of that as well, isn't it? It's a well-known fact. So all of these things is all not really helping with mental health. In the olden days, think of Jesus' times, was anybody vegan or gluten-free? There's Jesus saying, about to give out his bread and fish nowadays, and one person says, I can't eat that, I'm a vegan. The other one says, has that fish been tested for mercury? And the other one says, is that bread gluten-free? This is all nowadays because of all the processed foods nowadays. People are getting allergic reactions to things because the things are not compatible with their natural body system. Okay? Why is there a rise in mental health and special needs and disabilities on the whole? There is an increase, did you know, in mental health because, you know, babies, they're being saved earlier. You know, thanks to all our wonderful scientific technology, babies in the olden days would have died if they were born about 6-7 weeks early. Nowadays, up to 27 or 28 weeks early, babies are being saved. And because of that, there's a huge increase in mental health Because did you know that you need a full 9 months to develop the whole brain of a baby? All the neurotransmitters, all the neurons, everything intact, you need a full 9 months to develop. So when a baby is born early, then a lot of those neurotransmitters are missing, hence you're going to get all the accumulation of all the chemicals in the wrong places, and then that leads to mental health when they're older. Very, very interesting. There are so many early development of motor skills that are missing in children nowadays, thanks to the modern technology. We have got, for example, their balance is missing because we're putting them in seat belts and things. In the olden days, think of us in our cars, in our dad's old bangers, no seat belts, and as they went around the corners, we went with them. That actually develops chemicals in your brain and in your ears and balance. Okay, it's all connected. Okay, we're stopping them, their balance again in food, car seats and things, and those kinds of baby chairs. Even in the bath, you know, like if you think of when we had a bath, we'd go in the water and we would develop our balance by trying to stay on top of the water. But there are so many things nowadays there which are not helping us. Did you know that babies are not crawling so much nowadays? Now, you know your brain, there's a left and a right hemisphere, isn't there? And there's connections in between, connecting both hemispheres. Did you know that the crawling phase, the left and the right movement, makes connections in between your left and your right hemisphere? So because of that, when you're not crawling, it can affect lots of things in your brain. Lots of people are not crawling nowadays because we're putting stair gates in their way so that they don't crawl. And that way they're not crawling up the stairs. And you know that crawling mechanism is so important. It's the left, right, left, right. Not a lot of children are bike riding nowadays. Yes, all of these things develop your brain, believe it or not. This is all to do with biotechnology, the degree that I did, and the special needs masters that I did. So all of these things people don't look at.
So I'm just thinking there was something recently about children not climbing trees anymore.
Yes, that's right.
It's having quite a big effect, isn't it?
It is having a big, huge effect because they're not developing all the motor control and the neurons in their brains. And what's happening there is then that's developing mental health later on. So you're absolutely right. They're also going out. Makes you happy, does it not? You go out and you see the trees and the rivers, nature. It's a well-known fact that people in cities have more mental health than people out in the country, isn't it? Because it's all fumes and buildings. But going out for walks makes your mental health better, doesn't it? Much, much better out there. What about social media? Nobody mentioned that. Is that not having an effect on the children? Yes? So factors influencing later motor control development is things like television. Did you know that in 1971, 5 years onwards was the average age when a child would sit in front of a television? That's if you were lucky enough to have a television. And nowadays, 5 weeks, 5 weeks old, they can be plonked in front of a television. A lot of the time, it is used as babysitting. And I have got all the journals there to prove it. Age and everything I'm saying, I'm not just making up, that's in the Pediatrics Digest. So all of these games, they're just focused on that. It's not developing their neurons in their brain in other things, and they don't want to go out either. They just want to be in their rooms. And there's so many addictions actually, isn't there, out there to do with games and things like that. What else? We've highlighted this one already. What else isn't there any of nowadays? What did I say about Asian communities? What happens to them when they come here? What is lacking? Pardon?
They're isolated.
They're isolated, and nowadays, look at the family gatherings in the past. Yes? Think of your childhood days, all sit around a dining table, all eat together. All of that's missing nowadays. They've got nobody to talk to. They haven't got anybody to connect to. Everyone's on their mobile phones. Or go and plonk yourself in front of the telly. Watch EastEnders, which is very depressing, by the way, because it's all doom and gloom, EastEnders. Sit in front of the telly and eat your dinner. So that is having a big impact as well on mental health. Okay? Phones and all of that. In fact, this is the tan lines of the next generation. Okay? The other one, I like to throw in my jokes here and there. National curriculum is a big problem. Big problem. Like I said, the number of special needs increased, the number of mental health problems increased as soon as the national curriculum came out. And did you know that the latest national curriculum actually tells you on there, this is not accessible for anybody who has an IQ lower than 70. So if you've got an IQ lower than 70, are you not going to be lost in school and have mental health problems? Not access the curriculum, not get a job, and then later on deal with mental health. That's why your workloads are so big, by the way, isn't it? Yeah, so it does start at a low level. And it's very sad because the new national curriculum, did you know, that came out 2 years ago, which is when a lot of teachers left the profession, is 4 years higher than the old national curriculum. So at year 3, children are learning parts of the plant in biology, which is something we would have learnt when we got to secondary school. Everything's earlier, and their brains are not developed enough to deal with it all. Everything's at a higher level. You go to university, look at the interviews you have to go through. Did we go through that when we went to university? Did we go through any of the interviews that the poor youngsters have to go through when we started our first jobs? Nothing. My one was, when do you want to start? You know, and the latest interview I had was like 4 panel members, and then they watch you do this and they watch you do this. So much pressure on the poor youngsters nowadays. So much peer pressure, so much pressure, job competition and everything. All of that is having a very big impact. The other very big impact is that we have a left side to our brain and a right side to our brain. And if you're right-handed, you are good at language, writing, maths, science, speech. If you're left-handed, you are better at these things, art, drama, that kind of stuff, okay? Now the national curriculum, how do you think that is nowadays? More geared up for right-handers or left-handers? Right-handers. The whole national curriculum is about maths, science, literacy. And that's about it, by the way. There's no more paper mache mask making like there was when we were children. There's no art and crafts, nothing. Nothing there for the poor left-handers. So the left-handers are completely lost in the system, or if they've got a lower IQ, and we mustn't forget that everybody's made different. God didn't make us all the same. If we were all gifted and talented, and we were all doctors and dentists, where would everybody else come from then? Where would all the cleaners come from, and all the footballers, or other types of professions? So the government has not recognised this, and a lot of those children struggle when they are young, and they carry on struggling, don't even get to university. You have to be academic to get to university, and then they will deal with mental health problems. They feel rejected at a lower level. By the way, the firstborn is always like the father. I don't know if you know about this, this is genetics. The firstborn child is always similar to the father, and it's a thing about the father naturally staying with the family and looking after it psychologically. The secondborn is always like the mother. So if I had a firstborn who was autistic, and I had the parents in, I still always have a look at both the father and the mother. It's always the father who'd be like facing towards the door, and you'd know, yeah, that's definitely autistic. And then the mother, the secondborn's always like the mother. That's bearing in mind there are no miscarriages in between. So you have to sometimes have do a little bit of your homework to find out as well. So say the firstborn is autistic, but the dad's really sociable, and you ask the mother, did you have any other babies before you had your little Harry? Yes, I did actually, I had a miscarriage. There you go then. Then that firstborn will be like the mother. Does that make sense? This is all linked with mental health as well, because you may get adults who are special needs who will have mental health down the line as they get older. ADHDs, autism, all of that kind of stuff. There are connections missing in your brain no matter what special needs you have. Okay? There will be connections missing in your brain no matter what special need you have, even if you've got a speech impediment. There's a connection missing from your brain to your mouth. If you're ADHD, you will have lots of adrenaline in your body when you were born, even while you were pregnant. I had children who were born ADHD because there was trauma exhibited at birth, because maybe the father beat up the mother while she was pregnant with the baby, and then the baby already has a fight and flight mechanism inbuilt into them. So they're always ready to run if there's danger. Very, very interesting. So all of these things is all homework really to find out. Always. Do you do that in your role as mental health practitioners? Do you look into the history of the family? Yes? So the other thing to bear in mind is it the firstborn, and was the father like that? Again, the special needs was not there to diagnose when the parents were younger. Do you see? There was no special needs. Special needs coordinators only came out in 1992 when the national curriculum came out. And as soon as the national curriculum came out, because it was so hard, there was a rise in special needs because not everybody could access the curriculum. And that's when special needs coordinators started going into schools and diagnosing, and all the fancy terms came out. Autism, ADHD, OCD, and all of that. Okay? Whereas in the olden days, everybody just took on that person as they've got a different personality. Okay? If they're not sociable, well, they're shy then. But nowadays, everybody's got black and white names for everything. You can get a special need of any kind. If all of us were to go for diagnosis, we would all get a special need diagnosis of some kind, wouldn't we? Really, when you think about it. If we're super organised, we might be OCD. If we're a little bit active, we might be ADHD. There is actually so many out there, so many labels for so many things. It's actually gone a little bit over the top when I think about it, really. And that's why the special needs has risen. There's so many reasons why mental health has risen as well. There was actually no provision for special needs whatsoever in schools until very recently. The Education Reform Act in 1988 meant that all schools needed to enroll pupils, and it became like a business. The schools needed to attract pupils for all the funding and everything, and everything started to get published in league tables, and that's when schools needed to up their game and try to include everybody. And it's then really that special needs children were then allowed into mainstream education. Before that, special needs children were all either put into mental health hospitals or into private schools. So basically what I wanted to really talk about was why there is a rise in special needs, which then leads to mental health. These are the 4 different categories of special needs. So we've got cognition and learning, dyslexia, dyscalculia, so people who find writing and reading hard. Then we've got communication and interaction, which is autism. Asperger's has gone now, in speech and language. We've got behaviour, emotional and social, which is ADHD, depression and things like that. And sensory and physical, which includes things like muscular dystrophy, cystic fibrosis, cerebral palsy, hearing impairment. All of these can actually result in mental health. In fact, this category here in schools has now changed to mental health. all of them will always have a commonality. A lot of these special needs, in the olden days when I first started dealing with special needs in mental health, the children only had one category of need. But nowadays you might find there are complex problems. It's not just one category of need, they have lots and lots of categories of needs, all that lead to the mental health. It's not just one thing. And this is the chart I wanted to talk to you about. Any pupil who has special educational needs, there will always be connections missing in their brain, in their neurotransmitter pathway system, and that can always then result in mental health traits, because the chemicals in their brain are accumulating at the end of transmitter pathways. They're not completely mixed up. You know, your brain, a normal brain, is in a form of homeostasis, a balance of all the chemicals in your brain. Anybody who's got a disability of any kind, a special need of any kind, all the chemicals in your brain, they are not all completely mixed up, and they can be in certain parts of your brain more and in certain parts of your brain less. And that can then automatically lead to mental health. Does that make sense? So for example, antidepressants is then what helps to put the balance back up to normal homeostasis level again. Okay? It's just a little bit of background really on mental health. Who can tell me why there is an increase in special needs and hence mental health as well? Any ideas? Lack of reading nowadays. Do you know how many children don't read anymore? It's all electronic e-books. Now, you know the connection made when you read a paper book is different to the connection made when you read an e-book or when you make notes. You have to interpret what is being said. You're all brilliant today. You've all got your notepads, you're writing down, you're interpreting what I'm saying, you're understanding what I'm saying, then you're putting it down on the paper with your hands and it's helping you to memorize. But if you just recorded me or put me in straight into your mobiles, would it be the same effect? It wouldn't be, yes? So the way that the children are learning nowadays is having an impact on their mental health. They can't recall things, they're not reading real books, okay? It's all apps nowadays. It's called reading. It's how people install new software into their brains. It's all about apps nowadays. And that is not actually helping people at all, okay? Is there anything else that is having an effect on people's mental health nowadays, maybe at the younger age which you will see on the road? Do you think behaviour's got any better? No. Some of you are nodding no. There is an increase in behaviour, emotional, social problems. There's lots of reasons for that. In the Journal of Marriage and Family, Wiley states that there's a lot of broken homes, a lot more broken homes out there. That's having an effect on the children. Some of them haven't got good role model dads, for example, around. Some of the children that I dealt with who had huge mental health problems didn't even know which child was their real brother and which child was their stepbrother and which child was their cousin, because their mums and dads were in and out of relationships like anything. And you know when they'd have a really big problem is when they would go to another house to their dad, to visit their dad, and their dad would be with another woman who's not their mother, and they can't cope with that. The prefrontal cortex of a child is not fully developed in their earlier years, even post-teenagers, up to 25, so emotions are huge in them. They can't take it that their real dad is with another woman who's not their mother. And then they'll come home to their mother, and their mother's with another person who's not their dad. Yes? And their bonding is with their own real dad. So I saw loads of these problems at a very young age. And they had mental health problems then. As they get older, the mental health problems become bigger. So this is definitely something that the government has recognised as well. Behaviour is a lot worse because of all the government laws. You're not even allowed to shout at your child anymore. It's Childline. Go on Childline, everybody. Ring up Childline. Okay? There's a difference between being abused, though, by parents, and a difference between a mother telling you your boundaries. And the boundaries are not there anymore. A lot of mothers are very young. They'll try and be the friends of their children. They're not there, don't act like their mothers, and the boundaries are completely gone. If you think of the old-fashioned way what our mums used to, you know, I don't know about any of you, but I still respect my mum, even now, and she was stricter in her rules, when I think about it now, compared to what I am with my children. So there is a big change, a really big change in respect on the whole, with older people, with parents, with everybody really. There's a big thing about respect nowadays. Anything else? Any other things you've noticed in the youngsters? Something I used to see is the children used to always tell me their parents are too busy. She doesn't love me. I used to get so many children who tell me their mothers don't love them because they're too busy. And I remember once I walked into the after-school club after school because I needed to see a parent, and I couldn't believe that all the children who would say that to the counsellor were all sitting there in the after-school club, and there were all the children who said that our mum doesn't take us on holidays and things like the other children because she's too busy working, so we have to go in this before school club and after school club. It's very sad, but it's not the parents' fault at all, because a lot of those mothers were on their own and they had to go out and make a living. There was no way else that they could fend for the child, but it had an impact on the child. So those are only a snapshot of things which are all leading to mental health. So what we're going to talk about now is what is happening at the moment amongst Asian communities. So first of all, did you know that a lot of Muslim communities do intermarry amongst each other? I was talking about the Chechen tribe earlier on, where they only marry within that tribe and that's it. They don't go outside of the village. So obviously bad genes are going to multiply, aren't they? So we know that some mental health conditions are genetic. Schizophrenia may be one of them, or the tendency for certain mental health conditions are more there in families, isn't it? Probability is more there. So when the genetics are multiplied, sometimes Asian communities can have a higher proportion of genetically inherited disabilities due to the tendency to marry within extended families, and genes do multiply within tribes and things as well. And mental health may be due to differing culture. When people come here from our home countries, there's a big change for them. Weather is one of them. This is what the weather's like here in Britain, and they've come from countries where it's sunny all the time. Some of them don't even see rain, and all of a sudden it's dark, gloomy days. You look at winter days and it's dark by 4 o'clock. They're not used to that. And there is a such thing, isn't there, about stress and anxiety, which is linked with no sunshine, isn't there, on the whole? So Europe, for example, does have a lot more higher mental health because of the lack of daylight hours. So when people first come here, there is a shock to the culture, there's a shock to the faith, because in their own home countries there is no immigration. Who is from England going to go to Afghanistan and live there, in a developing country? Who's going to go to Iraq? Who's going to go to Pakistan? It's more likely people from them come to England, which is a developed country with lots more potential there for their children and for money and jobs. Okay? These are war-stricken lands where they will only see their own faith and their own culture and their own colour, and that's it. And I see this in the university big time with all the international students that come over who I support. They don't really even know how to talk with somebody from another culture. they lack the English skills. They learn English maybe from films, American films, and they'll come here and they behave like American films, and then the other people, they sort of shy away from them. You know, the culture's different, the food is different, everything. You know, there, in their own home countries, the family network is there. You live with your aunt and your grandma, and you know, the grandchildren are living with the grandparents. There's no old people's homes back there, okay? Everybody lives all together. There's no council houses, there's no benefits. Everyone all lives together, close-knit, tight families, like it was in the good old days here, Victorian family structure, okay? In big houses, large open courtyards. Go on holiday and have a look. Happy lifestyle. I talked earlier about prayer, that the whole country is around prayer times. You go to school or work in the morning, and by lunchtime you're home. So it's such an easy lifestyle. No taxes to pay. Sunshine out there. And then you come here and you're blocked up in your own room, in your own room, in your own tiny little houses, shacked up, dark, small rooms, cold, okay, no family. There's no family here. Everyone's back over there. And everything's private here. You know, the culture back in their countries is everybody's welcome. You just knock on the door and you go in and you have a big meal together. You know, like up north, I was talking to Hazel earlier, up north culture's different to here. You just knock on anyone's door and you walk in there. The house's doors used to be open in the 70s, I stood there. Okay, I was actually born up north, but then I moved to London when I was 2. But my mum tells me the culture. She used to moan, she used to come to London. Oh, it was so good in Huddersfield. We used to just walk in and out of people's houses. We all knew each other, the whole road knew each other. So all of these has a big impact, whether you're Muslim or whether you are from a black, Asian minority ethnic community. It is different, the culture. It's very private. You don't talk about all your problems openly. You don't just go up to any other neighbour and talk to them. All of these have a big impact on the people who would come here, and there would be no family networks. And they wouldn't even know the system, to be honest with you, the NHS system, that there would even be help out there to help them. Also, in their own home countries, any problems they would talk to with their families and just deal with it within the family. There's enough people within the family to talk to, or friends. The culture's different. Whereas here, they might not know you have to go out of your way to access support. And to a person who's not from your faith and not from your community, not from your culture, they may not want to talk to you. Okay? So all of these things you need to bear in mind if you do ever come across somebody, especially if they are immigrants. Okay? Don't forget, some people come here as asylum seekers as well, from war-stricken lands, who have seen death of their parents and families, and they may need support. But this is the kind of things that you will need to sort of think about, their family background. Okay, and then special educational needs, it doesn't exist. Do you know that? It really doesn't. Talking about specifically within the BAME community, and I was saying that autism and dyslexia are not recognised back home, especially in the developing countries. These terms only started here in the last 16 years. So any needs are actually put down to the personality of the child, and they may not understand genetics either. Okay? Special educational needs to somebody coming from their own home countries is, to them, somebody who's disabled in a wheelchair. Like it was here. Do you know, in my school there was this boy, and he was so badly behaved. He really was. And he needed to be diagnosed with something. So I was trying my hardest to get parents involved, to get him to get to the hospital. He was born premature, and that's a big thing usually with special needs, because a lot of the neurons are missing in their brains to begin with, so the special needs is there. And the parents wouldn't listen, so we got the governors involved, and the governor came and spoke to him, and he spoke fine with the governor, and the governor turns around and said to me, he's got no special needs. What special needs has he got? He talks fine, doesn't he? Because to him, he was an older gentleman. Special needs is somebody in a wheelchair who's got some kind of physical disability, but no hidden disability. So special needs like autism, dyslexia, all of that doesn't exist in our home countries. Even the word autism, it's only really within the last 20 years that's come here, hasn't it? And a lot of the parents, they would have pride within their families to keep that hidden. So I actually know a family that I'm supporting at the moment. It's actually one of my cousins, and it's hidden within the family, the autism. They don't tell anybody because it might be misconstrued as a mental health condition. And a lot of families here, even if they are born and brought up here, would still be living with mother-in-laws, father-in-laws, even cousins. The structure is still there. The family structure is very strong in Islam, because in the Quran it tells you to look after your parents, be good to your parents again and again. So people tend to keep the parents with them. Very rarely will they send them away to old people's homes and things. And they would not be readily open to mother-in-laws, for example, finding out that their child is special needs, because you know who the mother-in-law will blame is the daughter-in-law, not the son. Whereas, I don't know if any of you know, a lot of the special needs conditions are actually inherited from the fathers, which is something I definitely learned off in my job. I'm speaking from experience here. But they're just going to blame the daughter-in-law. Well, it's not going to be the lovely son, is it? It's going to be the daughter-in-law who's brought the special needs on in the children. So it would be hidden, it wouldn't be acknowledged, especially if the parents are educated. You know that? If the parents are educated, they're doctors, are they going to admit their child has special needs? And yet a lot of those parents may have just become a doctor in our home countries. You can pay to get all your degrees anyway, because the government's so corrupt. So honestly, you can get 4Ds and go to abroad and get a degree in medicine, can't you nowadays? Even some of the students nowadays who go to Bulgaria and get their degrees, you can get in with 4Ds. It's not like studying here. So they may have been special needs, they might have just bought their degree, but they haven't seen the genetics. They will not understand genetics either. Genetics is quite a modern concept. They may not have the education to understand genetics. So if the father's dyslexic, they may not understand the child is dyslexic, and then hence may have mental health problems. They may not understand that. So it's very complex actually. A special need in Asian community will be they're physically disabled but nothing in there. Okay? And it does take, I have had actually parents taking out their children, even within the English community, denying the fact that their children have got special needs, taking them out, putting them in another school, and that the other schools tells them the same. And then I've had parents coming back and saying, Mrs. Naeem, you were right. Or they've got to secondary school level and all of a sudden they've realised I was right, then they come back and they say you were right. So it happens in all communities. It's all about pride. Fathers especially do have this thing about being like the head of the household and not their child. Their child can't be like that. You know, it's a natural thing for men to be strong and have a bit of pride, and it's very, very difficult, I would say, for fathers sometimes to acknowledge that their child has got special education needs. I've had that in my experience as well, whereas mothers may get that aspect. And remember, special needs was not recognised when they were children. Bullying is actually more nowadays, especially children from the BAME community. It's a lot more because of the Islamophobia and people like Donald Trump or Boris Johnson who's about to come on board. I'm sure racism will increase. and Brexit as well has a big impact, by the way. There was actually one boy, you know when Brexit first came into play, and there was one Asian boy in my school, and somebody came up to him and said, when are you going home? Because he didn't understand what Brexit was all about, but there was all of a sudden a big hatred and race hate crime. I do actually sit on the race hate crime panel at Essex Police, and race hate crime actually increased in the week after Brexit all started, a couple of years ago. There is a big stigma in the community if anybody has mental health, because it can have an impact on the whole family, okay? A lot of family are related within themselves anyway. If one person has mental health, the whole family can be tarnished because they're all related to one another. And they're all living together in big families, and hiding it is easier than telling the whole half the tribe. Okay? It's easier because of all the stigma. And it's much, much better for a family to hide that fact. And mental health is linked with jinns as well, if it's to do with Islam. Because mental health, some mental health, for example, is linked with evil spirits and things, which is in all the cultures, if you go back in time, even within Britain as well, which is why they would burn witches and things, and they would put them in mental health hospitals and things, that kind of stuff. Things that you get when you are older, like Alzheimer's, dementia, Parkinson's was something that Hazel said is dealt with here, is all put down to old age. Because did you know that in the Quran it tells you that towards the end of life he returns to the same state of weakness with which he had started life in this world. So in our religion it actually tells you, you start off weak, okay, then you become stronger, and right in the middle years you're at your strongest, and then you return back to that state of weakness again. And it's really interesting, but it actually states that like a baby doesn't have hair, when you're older you lose your hair. Like a baby doesn't have teeth, when you're older you lose your teeth. Like a baby has nappies and wets themselves, when you're older your bladder goes and you wear continence pads and all the rest. When you're a baby you're in a pram, when you're older you're in a wheelchair. It actually is a fact really when you think about it, but that's the way of thinking if you went up to a Muslim family and said, your dad's got Parkinson's, okay, which you get more or less in old age. They would say, well, they'll shrug it off and they'll say, well, we know that he would become like that because that's the way old age is. It's a cycle, and it tells us already that they start off weak and they end up weak. And it is a reality when you think about it, but they may not acknowledge there is a diagnosis or a problem and seek medication. They may just say, well, it's fine, that's the way we are told it's going to be. Yes? The word dementia doesn't even exist in developing home countries. Parkinson's may not exist. They might just know it as old age. Okay, so that's something to bear in mind. These terms are new. Dementia, the term only came here about, I don't know, 15 years ago. It's a new thing, isn't it, all of a sudden, dementia awareness, dementia training. So all of that kind of stuff is important. They may refuse medication because of that as well. They may say, well, we don't need medication, we already know it's getting old. Old people's homes is a big no-no, because in our faith we are asked to look after our old parents, no matter how difficult they may become. So they would be expected to live with the family. Putting them in an old people's home will bring name and shame to the family. So people would point fingers and say, oh look, they went and put their granddad in a home. Remember, the Muslim community are smaller and all Muslims will know each other in Braintree. So all, like in the villages, everybody knows all the others in the village, and there's a bit more gossip. It's like that within the Muslim community, because all Muslims will know other Muslims within a small town. Oh, you'll never guess, you know what, they put auntie whatever in a home. You see, so it's a shame on the whole family, and it's a shame on the children that they didn't look after their parents. So there's all of that as well. You just have to think of Victorian culture in the olden days when there were no old people's homes and their grandparents lived with the families. Okay, and they will, as a result, be reluctant to get a diagnosis. So they might say no, they might not even take them to the doctor. They might just think of it as old age. They're losing their marbles because they're getting old, but it could be a mental health problem as well. And then hence a reluctance to get a diagnosis. Prayer is a very big one. Like I explained in the very first talk, everything about prayer. Prayer incorporates everything in a natural way. It incorporates mindfulness, which is used nowadays, okay? Meditation, includes all the yoga positions, which get rid of negative energy, which is what depression is all about, negative energy. And it has a free inbuilt counselling system where you are offloading your worries, problems, anxieties 5 times a day to God. Okay? So then, and it organises your busy life as well. So then why would you need to go and see a counsellor? You will get this problem with some Muslim communities. Or they'll say, it's okay, I do my 5 times prayer every day, which gets rid of all my negative energy, which is the evil spirits, and I'm going to be absolutely fine. In my prayer, I pray 5 times a day, not just once a day, and I offload all my worries and problems to them. I have God as my counsellor, I don't need you. Okay? So, in that case, what we need to explain is that yes, the mindfulness bit your body is doing, okay, some things naturally are getting better as you do your rituals, but the other problem is, what about the chemicals in your brain? They may not get completely okay with just using this system. You need to use that and meditation. The only way to get round is do this as well, but you do need antidepressants as well, because this system will help a little bit, but not totally bring your chemicals in your brain to balance. So it's a bit of both. And you also need to bear in mind that not all Muslims may not pray. So some Muslims may be Muslim by name, but they may not be practicing Muslims, so they may not have this, in which case then you can go through mindfulness and things with them. And mindfulness is actually all from Buddhism anyway, it's all from a religious practice, but given a different fancy name called mindfulness nowadays. But a lot of people will also say that they are getting other things from prayer, like community needs. They may be going to the mosque and reaching out to their community there and mixing it with other people, which is helping them with their oxytocin levels, their love hormones and things like that. They might say they don't need to see other people. They might be autistic and they may say that we don't need to see other people, we're getting all of that through the mosque. But something that I will say is that the reverends nowadays are far better advanced to deal with pastoral and mental health problems and counselling problems than imams. I can clearly say that. Imam degrees are private degrees which you pay for. A reverend degree is 7 full years with an affiliated university like Cambridge or Oxford, in which teaching skills are incorporated and counselling as well. And pastoral care is incorporated in there, inside their own training. An imam will not have any of those. An imam will only use the Quran, which does have a lot of mental health remedies in there, but they will not be in touch with the medical side, and they may not refer the patient to a counsellor or a doctor, a GP. A lot of the imams, I'm sad to say, are from back home as well, in which case they are totally not with it when it comes to mental health problems and aware of the system in this country. And this is why chaplains are not always imams. When I applied for my job as a chaplain, I was up against 4 candidates who were full-blown imams with the beards and the robes and everything. Men, all men, and I got the job. And I was really shocked at that. I thought, I can't believe I got the job when those 4 are fully qualified imams, dressed with the full works and everything. And then university turned around and said to me that we didn't want them because they were all black and white, you do this and you do this and you do this. Whereas with you, you had all the pastoral side to you, you knew more about outside the box, you knew about other people. Whether you're a woman or a man, it didn't matter to us. We wanted you. And I did get complaints from all the 4 imams who wrote in letters and said, what'd you get her for? We're full-blown imams, you should have got us. But the university dealt with it. Okay? So there is a difference, and I'm not saying that all imams are like that. Maybe the British boards are a bit better. But with all imams, the problem with Islam is they don't have a structured qualification process which is in line with this country. So I, as you know, have got a BSc, I've got a PGC, I've got an MSc, all according to this country. The imams who applied had qualifications according to private qualifications, which is not the same, which are not recognised in this country. And they would be missing the pastoral side and the counselling side. So if somebody says to you, it's okay, I don't need you, I'm going to go to my local mosque and my imam's my counsellor, it might be something for you to bring up in a diplomatic way because they don't know. They can say, look, they can deal with you on a religious point of view, but we can deal with you on a medical point of view. We can talk to you about other help that is available. And you can't talk to your community like the imam. Do you know, I get a lot of men talking to me about their problems because they don't want to go to their mom and talk to him about their problems because their mom knows their whole family. So there are so many ways you can reach out to these people. You can say, look, I'm from outside your family and outside your faith. I can give you advice without your family knowing, and, you know, medical advice if it's not religious. Does that make sense?
Sorry, how do we reach people like that? You know, Muslims that might not, how do they, if there is some scepticism from the mosque, how do we actually reach those people?
Right, I'll tell you what's happening in London, because the mosques are a lot more advanced, I would say, in London than these regions.
Yeah.
There are time to talk, time to change. All of these talks are happening in the mosques. That's the only way. Do you know that is the only way? To have the talks in the mosque so that the people there are aware that all of these avenues are there in place to take. That's the only way. And it's happening in London a lot, but those mosques are a lot further in the line when they were made than the mosques here in these regions. Here, you hear the word mental health and they do a runner. So, you know, at the moment, the way it is in the mosques. But it is going to get better. It will get better. I know Hazel tried to reach out to our community, and they said yes, yes, and then I never heard from them again. I think they just said yes to please me, but they were not really interested, to be honest with you. It's going to take another generation, I think, to put things right. And the youngsters are the ones that will do it. But also, I think it's very sad. I think the government really does need to do something about the way imams are qualified, because I only see them knowing the religion black and white. They're not into interfaith. A lot of the ones from back home will only be into mixing with their own communities, so they will not understand other cultures, other faiths, and even mix with them. Sad to say all this, but it's true. And quite a lot of them might not know English either, so they are missing all the youngsters, the youths, where English is their first language. There's a big gap there. And the ones who are born here, their courses are black and white. Quran says this, Quran says this, Quran says this, black and white. Nothing there about pastoral care, counselling, that kind of stuff. I referred someone to their mum the other day and he goes, well, why do you need a counsellor? She needed a marriage counsellor. And the wife wants a marriage counsellor and the husband doesn't. So I sent the husband to the imam, thought he'll sort him out. And the mum turned around and says, why do you need a marriage counsellor? Well, you've got the Quran, haven't you? That's all you need. So I don't agree with it. Okay, yes, you need your religion as well, yes, because the boundaries are all there. But some things, yes, you do need a counsellor to talk to give you guidelines according to qualified practitioners who have had experience of these problems. You need both. You need both. And I'll say that to everybody. Okay. Praying 5 times a day, a lot of people think that's too much, but in the Church of England schools I've worked in, the children, they get up in the morning, they pray in assembly, then they pray at lunchtime before they go out and eat, then they will pray again in the afternoon before they go home, and then all they do, a lot of those children, is just pray once more at night. So it can work, and it does help, but like I said, it doesn't completely help with somebody, for example, who's got schizophrenia. They definitely then need medication when they're not. You know, or stronger mental health conditions like bipolar, where they do need medication to set their chemicals correct in their brains and things. Okay, now, yes, of course you can, yes.
We work with anxiety and depression. We don't prescribe medication, we're a therapy service. So what we will do with people is to look at kind of how they think at times and how that kind of impacts on your mood and how you behave.
Yes.
And a lot of some of the things that can maintain things like depression, anxiety, is having time by yourself in your head.
Yes.
Because that can often, when you're depressed, will just lead to you feeling worse and worse and worse about yourself.
Right.
Because you think I'm a failure, and when you think about the fact you're a failure, you become more depressed and you see all the things you're not doing and you get worse and worse. That's all anxiety.
Yes.
It's kind of, oh my God, I'm not going to be able to cope with this, it's going to become a nightmare, I'm going to fall apart, those things, and you worry about what's going to happen in the future.
Yes.
So, somebody would come who has a faith and they kind of pray a lot of times. That process of being on your own and in your head may actually lead that person to feel worse.
Right.
Because they'll then kind of start to think, well, actually, I'm here, I should be feeling better, I'm praying, I'm not feeling better, why am I not feeling better? And I'm starting to get anxious or feeling
Yes. Yes.
So I suppose we have quite a challenging role there because we can see a process that is potentially making them worse at that point.
Yes. Yes.
But we don't want to be kind of saying, well, no, you shouldn't pray, you should, because that's going to be that's going to be very contrary to their faith and what they usually should be doing.
Yes.
I'm curious how you feel we might be able to work within that might be kind of acceptable to that person to think about perhaps that process and how and what they do within their prayer and how that kind of works.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Now, there is actually one part of prayer where you're still, which can help with that. And I've got a video here, and it will help you a little bit to understand how prayer can help with that stillness. Because certain parts of your brain actually close in that meditative state. happens to your brain when you're in that meditative state, where certain parts completely close down, and helps you a lot. The slowing down slows down, the stress decreases and everything. But that's very interesting.
I think one of the problems we have, and
Yes.
from the topic, but I think sometimes when people are incredibly anxious or low, actually it's very difficult for them to concentrate on being in the moment with the prayer. I think this is where you might go to. So actually, how if someone's faith, and not necessarily just Islam, but any faith in general, I'm thinking of maybe Buddhism, when you're supposed to be able to be with yourself for long periods of time, it's sometimes a challenge for us, because our work would sort of almost do the opposite, about getting the person outside of their own head.
Yes.
So I guess it's about how we could work with someone to manage that. So
I think short, sharp bursts is better. So start with very small, not long lengths of time, and then slowly increase it. So small things. Alternative, I don't know if you do art therapy here. Yeah. See, that's a very good one, art therapy, because that's something where they don't even realise they're doing anything. And whereas with prayer, you're asking them to do something, aren't you, in meditation? But with art therapy, they quietly just sit there colouring in, because we do this in our women's group, art therapy, and they quietly just sit there, especially the ladies love all the colouring in, intricate patterns, and while they're doing that, they're in a state of peace, and you'd be so surprised how many problems they let out all of a sudden while they're sitting there. Might be something you might want to introduce there.
yeah, maybe in that being in with other people, like obviously with the colouring, when people are talking of being with other people doing it rather than on their own.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
Okay.
yeah. Yes. So that works. That definitely works. Might be something for you to consider to introduce here, because with meditation they might not want to do it, mindfulness they may not want to do it, and then you have to be, it's quite a long, lengthy process, isn't it, mindfulness? And if they're suffering from anxiety, they may not want to sit that long. But it's just looking at alternative ways. If you do want to do mindfulness, then do small bits at a time. Then you build up to something bigger, really. Now, food is another very important one. There are, within all Asian communities, there's all these herbal remedies. So, you know, if you look at all the herbal remedies which are all becoming rife, all the herbal shops and things, there's all of those in the home countries as well. Witch doctors and all of that kind of stuff. So they might be reluctant to take medication, which they see as too many additives and too chemically, and they might say, that's okay, I'll just go and I'll just take my herbal remedies, and we have herbal remedies for nearly everything. But the herbal remedies doesn't mean it's going to help you in there. So you might get some people who will say that to you, that, you know, I heard, you know, I can have this and this will help me. But it might be worth you researching actually what does help with mental health. So I know that magnesium helps with mental health, and phosphorus items, that's a well-known fact. Dates helps with mental health. They might be readily want to do that rather than the medication. It's just pointers for you. Not dieting, we know is not good for you at all, but fasting is something that is more readily what a Muslim person would do. And I was going to put a video up of the 5-2 diet, which is rife out there at the moment. Who's heard of the 5-2 diet? Yes? That is actually, believe it or not, from Islamic things. So the Prophet used to fast twice a week. And Mosley, who is the man who actually, Michael Mosley, who introduced the 5-2 diet, looked into Islam. So somebody's really obese and they might be suffering mental health problems because of that. You tell them to go on the diet, they're not going to do it. If you tell them, why don't you try the 5-2 diet or fasting, it's going to work. And it's actually proven it helps with mental health as well. So I'm going to put that video up for you now while we're on the topic of food.
I mean, I've lost about 19 pounds of fat over a period of about 2.5 months. And I was quite skeptical about it before I began. And then I looked into it, and the science was really impeccable. Not just about weight loss, but about all the other health improvements you get with it. And that's why I wrote a book about it. And that what makes it psychologically attractive, is the fact that you're not going to be doing it for the rest of your life, if you like. You're going to do it 2 days a week, and I do it on a Monday and a Thursday, not least because that's what the Prophet Muhammad suggested many years ago, and all the great religions have advocated fasting. Well, what's striking about it is there have been a number of clinical trials now done, some here, some in the States, following up hundreds of women, hundreds of men over quite long periods of time, and what they find is that people actually feel more energetic. They feel more enthused. Men in particular find it easier to exercise while fasting. They burn more fat, that it makes you feel more cheerful. There's actually quite a lot of evidence, which is very, very unexpected. But what happens is your brain starts producing this stuff called neurotrophic factor, which is both protective against Alzheimer's and dementia, but it also makes you feel good.
Okay, so that is actually to do with mental health. You mentioned that in itself, neurotrophic factor that's released in your brain from fasting. Try telling a Muslim person to give up on their food. It's not going to happen because they like their food, and in our culture there is a lot of food. We have a lot of food in our culture. So dieting and stuff's not going to work, but fasting will. Is something that they will more readily accept, and that's within all cultures, as you saw. There is actually one more video which I can put on about fasting.
In each stage of the 30 days of fasting. Stage 1. During the first couple of days of fasting, both blood sugar level and blood pressure drop. The body starts the cleansing process, and the first few days are the hardest as they are usually accompanied with headaches, dizziness, nausea, and intense hunger. Stage 2. During the second stage, the body becomes accustomed to the fasting schedule and the digestive system is able to rest. The digestive system focuses its energy on cleansing the body and healing the cells as the white blood cells in the body start to become more active. During this stage, the organs start their repair process as well. Stage 3. By the third stage, energy levels will have increased, your mind is able to concentrate better, and an overall feeling of wellness overtakes you. During fasting, the body's healing process becomes a lot more efficient, and so the body repairs any damaged cells during this stage. During this stage, the colon, liver, kidney, lungs, and skin are detoxing by eliminating toxins. Stage 4. During the last 10 days of fasting in Ramadan, the body has become accustomed to the fasting process. Your body becomes more energetic and you experience improved memory and concentration. At this stage, the organs are finishing up their healing process, and once all toxins are removed, the body is able to function at its maximum capacity. These are just some of the physical benefits of fasting that will take place within the body. But the spiritual benefits this month are far greater than anything mentioned here.
So basically, I can do a whole lecture on fasting, but while I was on the food aspect, I thought I would mention the fasting as well, which is proven nowadays to help with mental health, which a Muslim person would be more readily accepting of as well. Physical and mental disabilities are overdiagnosed in people whose first language is not English. That's actually a well-known fact. Because of the lack of awareness of the culture and faith, this is happening a lot, and there are journals to prove this. So just to be mindful of that. They may lack English skills to explain, and then they could easily have gone through to the system to you without you knowing, but I'm sure you have your own thresholds for analysing people, don't you, within your system. And basically that does bring me to the end of this section. So at this stage, I'm going to open the floor to any questions you like about mental health within the BAME community or Islamic community, whatever you want to know, I can try and answer. Yes?
Just a quick question. When you mentioned that mental health was something that was founded in Islam, did you mean in the Quran or in
It
general?
initiated in the Quran first, and from there the scientists then started studying mental health, and that's how that scientist who you saw the story of wrote a book about mental health.
The only thing is, you know, I am Christian, and
Yes.
this is something that you see in the Bible. So if you think about, you know, Old Testament and the New Testament, you get
It
talked
is in
about.
there.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
Yes.
when you said that, it was a bit like, okay.
Yes.
So
Well, it was the first. What I mean is, it's the first person who actually wrote the book on mental health. But evil spirits and stuff are definitely in Christianity, which I mentioned because I know that reference to exorcisms and things. So it definitely is. The devil is mentioned, is he not, in the Bible as well? But what I meant was, it was that scientist who then wrote the first psychiatry and stuff. Yeah, from obviously what was in the Quran, but it definitely was in the Bible because we know reference to exorcisms and stuff, don't we? And
Yeah.
the Antichrist and all that kind of stuff.
I do know about jinn in, you know, in Muslim. Is that something that they use exorcism? Do you guys
Yes.
use that as well?
Yes.
Or?
That basically is what exorcism is. So if you ask a Christian reverend, they go into houses to get rid of evil spirits by reciting prayers. That is what we believe is the jinn. So jinn is an evil spirit. So we have exactly that, except the imams would do recitation of the Quran to get rid of the evil spirit instead of the Christian prayers. But it's the same concept, exactly the same concept.
So if you do have someone telling you that, you know, how do you help them without involving, you know, the imam?
You know what? I say this again and again, it's not just a matter of getting rid of the evil spirit, it's both. It's got to be both. So yes, you can advise, and they may say to you that, you know what, I think I'm possessed by a jinn. I hear whispers, he talks to me every day. Right, that's schizophrenia then, isn't it? Straight off, okay? So, so you can say to them, right, you can go to, and that person might say, look, I need to go to their mom and I'm going to get an exorcism done. They call it the ruqya in Arabic, in case they use that word. Ruqya is exorcism. You can say, fine, you can do that as well, but as well as that, you need medication as well, because we need to correct the chemicals in your brain, which you can't just do just from prayer and fasting and their mom doing the exorcism. You need to go to a doctor. Is that when you refer them to the GP, don't you? You do that, don't you? Do you do referrals? Yeah, straight to the GP, and then they do the referrals. You can refer straight. So you have to try and explain to them. You have to be on their side. So say, yes, okay, I know all about the jinn, and you have to pretend you know about it all now, because you do. Okay, I know all about the jinn, that's great. Go to your local imam and get someone to do the exorcism, but you do need the extra help as well. You may be schizophrenia, go away and look it up if you need to, okay, and then get medication done as well. Because it's got to be both, it's got to be everything.
I think I've had experience of that working really well, actually. We used to work with inpatient, as guys go to a Christian kind of group, and the care coordinator talked to the pastor and kind of about kind of difficulties, and because the patient was actually much more open to talking to the pastor about problems than the mental health services, and it actually kind of worked in a really quite nice coordinated way. So pastor kind of saw the signs of when he was actually becoming quite psychotic and when it was becoming kind of delusional. He was able to kind of probably talk to professionals, talk to family, things like that, to kind of get support. So it can work quite well when it's done well. Not always.
I think about it differently.
I think the key with a religious person is to try and be on their side and know, pretend at least that you know what they're talking about, which you all do now. I think you've done very well here to understand, considering, you know, Hazel was telling me you've hardly had any Muslim clients. I'm really quite surprised you even got me in to talk about it, to be honest, because usually I'm only called in places where they've had so many Muslim clients that they don't know what to do. but you haven't even had any and you got me in, and I think that's absolutely brilliant. I really do. And you know a lot now, so you know they would really open up to you if you showed them that you understand their culture and their faith. They would very readily open up to you, very easily then. But medication is very important. I think there is a big gap, very big gap in the Islamic community, where it's either prayer and nothing else, or it's just medication and then no prayer. And I strongly believe it's got to be both, and I've had experience. I have had experience of lots of mental health people within the Asian community and without, and I feel it needs to be both. Yes.
Sort of similar to that, like you mentioned this, I don't know if I understood it right, this women's group who did the colouring.
Yes.
Is that something, I guess I'm thinking that if it's difficult to get in from like a man level,
Yes.
are there groups in mosques for women or men or young people or children that are more kind of informal, that aren't coming in for prayer times? Does that make sense?
Yes.
Because I guess the reason
They
what I'm
are.
asking is,
Yeah.
I guess I would think, you know, we've all got mental health, there's
Yes.
things that can make it better or worse
Yes.
or boost it.
Yes.
And could there be some scope in kind of in that way?
Yes.
It's not about you've got to refer yourself to Health in Mind, but what do you do when you're stressed, like conversations,
Yes.
like
Yes.
mental health promotion?
There are groups like that, but not in the mosque. The mosque ones are all centred around prayer. The mosque just seems to think the prayers are sorted all. Do you see? There are groups, but they're outside of the
So would
mosque.
there be groups in the Muslim community, like a women's group?
There is, because there's the one that I'm running,
Right.
but very few in these areas. But our group's so popular that we had non-Muslims coming in. So I said, fine, come on in. And you know, 50% of our ladies now are white British English, because they love it. They love the speakers, because everything that what we're doing is not really specific for Muslims. It's for everybody. And it was women together, but we get some men coming in as well now. Because we can't exclude. If they want to come, that's fine, you know. So yeah, but it's going really well.
So
The
more
council
outside of the
helps.
mosque, but it's more like a community group.
Community group, and we don't really use. Well, we use interfaith talks. We definitely do interfaith talks, but we use lunches. So everyone brings a dish and brings it in, so it makes them feel special. When have made a homemade dish and bring it in, and we all eat together, that forms a really good bonding. And then the art therapy we always have in the afternoons. And then all the ladies, they actually release all their problems while they're colouring in. It's quite amazing without them even knowing. They're just sitting there colouring in quietly, then all of a sudden they'll come out with something really dramatic. You think, oh my God, where did that suddenly come from? But then luckily we've got all the people in place who we can refer them to. So very quickly I can refer them to people. Something very interesting that you might find within the Muslim community is that there will be very little bereavement counselling that you will come across. There's two reasons for that. One is our bereavement process is very fast. So we encourage to bury within 3 days. So you know when it's prolonged bereavement and you're waiting and people are in a mess, and then as soon as they've buried them or cremated them, they're better. That system's very quick for Muslims. So within 3 days they have to be buried, and then that's it, it's gone. And the other reason why a bereavement, we get over it very quickly, is we very strongly believe in the afterlife. So we believe they have gone on to another place, and we will meet them one day. So they may have gone to heaven, and we will meet them one day in heaven. So it's very quick. So you won't get that many bereavement problems, unless the person's guilty, they've done something like, for example, they may not have looked after their mum, and then their mum's passed away, and then it's the guilt that will drag on them the whole time, that they didn't look after the mother. It depends on the circumstances. Okay? Any more questions?
Do you have any advice about how you could better kind of get hurdles for people in these situations? Because that situation you just talked about just now is exactly the sort of patient that we quite often see when there's leftover feelings of guilt, someone's died or something's happened. But I guess our challenge is how we can be.
Yes, I think that, for example, the Women Together group that I run, I'm always getting people. We had someone from IACT, from the South Essex team, who came to speak to the ladies and gave out referral forms where you can self-refer. That worked. So it's a matter of finding out where all the groups are, the ethnic groups, if it's those kinds of people we want to target. So Women Together, for example, we've already had someone from IACT there. That would be a good way, and into the mosques if you can. The mosques in London, like I said, are quite with it. They've had time to talk and people like that already in the mosques giving big talks, and that's helped a lot of vulnerable, oppressed women and all the rest. In these regions, the mosques here they're newer, so it takes that much time to get established, I would say. But it's getting better. Like I said, the ladies in Women Together, at first when I would mention the word mental health, they'd run a mile. Someone actually said to me, if I come to your group, people are going to think I'm mentally ill, so I don't come. And now that same lady happily comes. So I think the stigma is definitely going slowly. And we will get there in the end, hopefully. Any more questions? Yes?
About the prayers that you say you pray 5 times a day.
Yes.
For somebody who's struggling to cope with daily tasks, that could be quite a lot for them. So, I mean, do you have to pray at specific times, or can you actually combine?
You can combine, yes.
Okay.
There's so many different ways. It's not that hard and fast rules, really. So you can pray until the next prayer, you can catch up with them at night. If you're really, really ill, then, you know, there are other ways of praying. For example, if somebody's disabled and they can't do the postures, they can just sit and just recite the words and things like that, you know. And it's not that black and white, really. I mean, what I've told you is for a healthy person. Children don't need to pray. It's only for once you reach puberty, for example. Things like that. And not all Muslims pray, that's the other thing we need to know. It's only a practicing Muslim that will pray. So don't assume every Muslim who you see will be praying. And there are quite a few that don't. So it's between them and God really as well. You know, there's no one here in this world to ask them why aren't you praying. It's really between them and God. What they want to do really. What I've told you is what all Muslims should be doing, as in what's in the Quran, what's in the religion. But that doesn't mean that's what everybody does. It's like a Christian, not every Christian will go to church every Sunday, and not every Christian has read the Bible, and not every Christian does Lent and things like that. Yeah, so that's something that we need to understand as well.
Something you think would be appropriate to have a conversation with someone about if they're in therapy, so if they were feeling like they weren't being a good Muslim or they weren't doing enough, or they were that was kind of part of the difficulties. I suppose that is quite a challenging thing to think about in therapy with someone. Actually, I suppose this comment you make goes between them and God.
You know what? I think that it would be an excellent idea to ask them that, because a lot of mental illness can be because of that, because they haven't connected, and they could be feeling this guiltiness. I know a lot of Muslims who don't pray and they feel really guilty that they're not, because they know they have to.
How do you allay their concerns about that when someone maybe says that to you? They're kind of like, I'm not
don't worry about it. You know, do a little bit at a time. You know, if you're feeling guilty, why don't you try one? See how it goes. Maybe the midday one when you're awake, because the morning one's the most difficult one to get up for, and the late night one's late. So why don't you try one, see what it's like, see how you feel afterwards, then you gradually increase. Don't full-blown go into it 5 times a day. You know, even when I first started praying, it was like 1 or 2. You know, it's not until you become fully practicing that you do need a lot of willpower, to be honest with you.
There's quite a good thing to hear. So I think often we feel a bit wary of kind of suggesting how someone should or shouldn't be moving
Yes,
towards it.
everything needs to be short and sharp, small bursts to begin with. Don't forget, somebody who suffers from mental health is going to find everything incredibly hard to begin with.
So
So
that's
they need,
consistent with the work we would do with someone,
they
because you talk
need
about building things up
small.
slowly.
yes, it's definitely something I would definitely recommend to speak with a Muslim about, because a lot of guiltiness comes from not doing a 5 Ks, and that could be a problem. That could be why they're feeling the way they are, you see. Because it does tell you in the Quran, truly in the remembrance of God do hearts find rest. It tells you that in the Quran, and they may have that in their mind. And it says something about, you know, something about if you don't remember God, you will lead a depressed life. They might have that in their mind and they're feeling guilty. So no harm at all in bringing up their religion with a Muslim person, because the likelihood is they will be practicing, because Islam, like I said, is a very strong religion, and they are more likely to practice it, or be aware they're not practicing it, if you know what I mean. Okay. Any more questions or anything else you'd like me to cover? Because like you've seen, I've got every video and PowerPoint in here, so whatever you say, I'll bring it up. So if there's anything else you want me to cover in more detail, I've got till 4 o'clock. I can cover. Yes, go ahead. We want questions. It's fine.
Something often I
Now's
struggle
your
with
chance.
therapy is the therapies we offer are very much change therapies. It's about someone, often we can see certain things they're doing or things they're thinking about are leading to more anxiety or low mood. So
Yes.
a lot of our therapy is about making change so that person can alleviate their anxiety.
Yes.
So, for example, if someone's anxious about going out, we will gradually encourage that person to kind of change their thinking and start to go out and expose themselves to. Often when somebody has a very strong faith, often the comment will be, I'll trust God, or I'll trust to my faith.
Yes.
So it kind of means that the responsibility isn't theirs, and that they don't have to do something,
Yeah.
which is then really difficult to get.
Now,
that change
I like
going.
that question. This is very important, because I come across a lot of people like that, right? It will happen God willing. It will happen God willing.
Exactly.
Actually, it will happen God willing if you make an effort. So basically, we do believe in destiny. Destiny is a very strong part of our faith. We believe everything good and bad is all from God, okay? But you don't know, you see, what is your destiny. You don't know that. So if you don't try, you don't know. So in our religion, you are supposed to try to begin with, and then God will work his wonders. Do you see? So it's God willing, but it doesn't mean you just, you know, it's like, for example, say somebody's got an exam, and they say, I'll pass God willing, but then they don't revise. Well, what do you think? You're going to pass then? So yes, you will pass God willing, but you've got to make an effort to begin with, don't you?
The thing
To get to the God willing. You're still in control of what you do, and then the decision is up to God. So say you revised fully, everything knew inside out, you got to the exam and it was all terrible, the exam was, then you can say, well, it was God's will that I failed, so I failed. But what you can't say is if you didn't revise, not a thing, didn't know anything in the exam and failed, and then say it was God's fault to begin with. So I feel very strongly about that one, because I've come across enough people like that, including imams. God willing it will happen, and then it doesn't happen because they didn't put the effort in the first place. You still have to put the effort in, don't you, for it to get to the God willing bit. That was a brilliant question, by the way, because I always get that within my own community. It's interesting that coming from outside of my own community. You're really great, all of you. Right, any more questions? Now's your chance.
Sorry.
Does anybody want to? Have you got another one?
Yeah.
Right, go on then, go ahead.
So something we also get, so something we also have is someone who has OCD,
Yes.
often a lot of the stuff that the obsessions, compulsions are internal in someone's head.
Yes.
So often someone will think, kind of, if I think this, then I'll be punished.
Right.
So if the thought pops into my head, say that I've done something, I've hurt someone or something like that, then God is going to punish me.
Right.
And I have to do lots of things to prevent God from punishing me, because this thing has popped into my head, which I don't have any control over, it's part of the disorder, it's kind of there.
Right.
And I suppose that can be a real challenge to
Yes.
kind of
Now,
to
there's
help
two
someone to
things
not feel
there.
like they're going to get punished, and
Yeah.
that it's actually this is a normal.
Two very important things there. So one is you don't know if God is going to punish you. You don't know that. Okay? So you can't put your chickens before they've hatched kind of thing. Yeah? So you don't know that is going to happen, do you? So forget that thought. The second thing is ask God for forgiveness. If they're religious, they ask God for forgiveness. So at the end of our prayers, we have that bit where we ask God for whatever we want and offload all our feelings. We also offload all our sins and we say, please God, forgive us. And we believe that God is all merciful and will forgive all our sins. So it doesn't just have to be within Islam, even within Christianity. You can verbally just say, forgive me, or write it down, get rid of that thought. Yes? Because if you keep thinking that, then none of us have got soul everything. Because we all sin and we all do that. But the way is to continuously move on and to forgive and forget kind of thing, isn't it? That's in all faiths. But especially in Islam, we have got this thing about offloading and asking God to forgive us, and then the rest is up to God, and then we move on, kind of thing.
And linked to like OCD as well, how long would you need to ask for forgiveness for? Because I think with OCD often it leads to if so a
5 times a day if you're Muslim.
Because I suppose it's the thing, so with OCD, they'll have a thought and they might have to do something 30 or 40 times before they feel like it's done and it's okay. And that's part of the difficulty, the problem for that person.
Yes.
So I suppose being able to kind of have an idea of, well, what is a normal amount of time for someone to have to forgive.
Well,
Yes,
you know
and then go
what?
with that.
For Islam, all the sins in between each prayer, you ask for forgiveness on that prayer. So say they did the morning prayer and then 10 times they did something bad. Then at lunchtime, please God, for the 10 times I've done bad, can you forgive me? Just for the whole lot. Just for the whole lot. Or, please God, all the sins that I've done since the morning, can you please forgive me? And that's the end of that. You don't even need to count them. Because OCD, again, they're probably counting them, aren't they? And that's all it is.
Would that be incorporated as well then? So when they do the Ramadan and they're fasting,
Yes.
obviously you're doing that as part of your commitment to religion, but isn't that to make you a better
It is.
Muslim?
It is. It's annual training for the whole year.
So that could be incorporated as part of that and my forgiveness would be
Brilliant.
like my focus
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
Ramadan maybe,
Yes.
or...
It's not just food you give up in Ramadan. You give up your backbiting, your back chat, your gossiping, ladies, all that kind of stuff.
Really bad habits.
Lying, all your bad habits you give up. And it's annual training for the whole year, because did you know if you give it up for a whole month, you're likely to give it up for the whole year. Like smoking, there's so many Muslims who smoke. In Ramadan they don't smoke for the
They
whole
can
month.
do it.
And then all of a sudden they don't smoke again because they're not used to it anymore. So it's annual training for the whole year, fasting, giving up all your bad habits. Well, it's like Lent, isn't it, when you give up something for 40 days. Some people give up lying for 40 days and then they're not doing it again. So it's just getting into the routine and then you don't do it again, basically. So, and also in Ramadan, if you do get any Muslims who think they're sinning, one part of Ramadan, the third part, is all about forgiveness. 1/3 of it is. So God
What does
forgives
that
you.
look like?
We just believe that God just forgives all your sins in Ramadan, and all your good deeds are multiplied as well. Because it's a very holy month. So,
That towards yourself, towards others as well. You think about forgiveness.
well, yes, you forgive others, and all your own sins are forgiven, basically, and your own good deeds are multiplied.
So you kind of start a clean slate after your
Yes,
day.
you do. So after that 1 month, you should be a good person again. It's annual training for the whole month, basically. Yeah. But somebody who's mentally ill doesn't need to fast. That's the only bit there. But if they are able to understand why they're not fasting, then they can. It's when they don't understand, so it's more the very disabled who don't know why they're fasting. But somebody who's maybe on antidepressants, they can still fast, as long as they're still taking it. It's good for them, isn't it, like Michael Mosley said.
I worked with a Muslim gentleman who, for every session, we had to have a chaperone because he didn't feel comfortable being in a room with me on my own, and also wouldn't shake my hand.
Right.
Is that something that we should be checking out when we're booking in patients with all Muslim?
There's no way of knowing, okay? But, you know, even in the very orthodox Judaism, for example, a man will not shake a woman's hand. So you know what the best thing is? Don't put your hand forward. If they put their hand forward, you extend your hand and shake it. And that's the best advice I've given to the council as well. So if it's a Muslim, which they've written down on their forms, or even Jewish as well, just keep your hands behind on your sides. And if let them do the initiating, and the same if you get a Muslim woman, let her put her hand forward herself, then you do it. Otherwise you don't have to. You're not in that capacity where it's a big business meeting and you've got to put your hand forward. That's the best advice I can give you there.
Okay, and what about the chaperone?
You know what, it's his choice, but to be very honest with you, we're living in a multi-gender world, and it shouldn't really be necessary, but it might be because of his anxiety. Obviously he's got anxiety to see you in the first place, that might have triggered.
Well, he was a forensic patient, so again, I don't know whether that would have played a part, but he was very adamant that he could not be in a room with me on my own because I was a female, and also that he couldn't look at me directly in the eye, so he couldn't maintain eye contact. So that was another dynamic that we had in the session. So I don't know whether that was
I think he's a super orthodox Muslim then, if that is what you said. I explained earlier we wear a hijab to stop fornication and adultery, but there are other smaller things also which are avenues to stimulating desires. So a super orthodox person will also think that I mustn't, because you know they say love at first sight, and you know eyes are the window to your soul and all of that, and physical contact releases oxytocin and all the rest. I've done actually a lecture on the science of attraction, so that's another one. And so they I mean, like I said, he's a super orthodox person, and he wouldn't want to go down any of those avenues of desire. But obviously it's about control as well, isn't it? It's self-control as well. I would say he'd be a bit more anxious than the norms.
So it's not something that we routinely need to ask or offer, but if we know that they're particularly orthodox in their practice, that's something that we might have to factor into what therapy will look like with that person, and
I
think be mindful that we need to. I
personally feel if someone doesn't want to see a female therapist, they can ask for a male doctor, a male person themselves, to be honest with you, because it's like when a female has a gynecology problem and she asks for a female doctor, doesn't she? It should really come from them, to be honest with you. If it's that bad, they themselves really should have got a male therapist. There's male therapists here. So, you know, it's just making things awkward, to be honest with you. Shaking hands is easy. If you know they're Muslim, just keep your hands behind on your side, and it's up to them. If they extend their hand, then you shake their hand. It's the best way. The same for a female and a male. Yeah, and if he was that uncomfortable, he should have got a male person to talk to them, you know. Again, you'll find this more with people who may be from another country, where it is normal for you to see a person of the same gender, do you see, in the first place, and they're not used to it. Whereas somebody born and brought up here will know that all the time you're talking to other genders within university, within work, you know. there would be more understanding. But he may have been, for example, from his home country where it's the norm where you only see people from your own gender, you see. But in this country, I think people need to also understand that you may see a male person who may be gay, because we were talking about LGBT earlier. So, you know, that's another thing, isn't it? Another thing really to think about. Because I know people who have walked into a room for an interview and a woman, not shook hands with the man, but shook hands with all the females, and then one of those female was lesbian. So, you know, what you do then? So basically there needs to be more awareness for them as well, to understand themselves really.
It's a really interesting dynamic. So in the service before, we had a gentleman who had an assessment with a Muslim lady, therapist, and he then phoned up and said, "Don't want to see that person," and we asked why, and he said, "Because they're a Muslim," and we refused. We said, "Well, no, we're not going to change therapists because."
So it was a non-Muslim.
Yeah, so it was a white British male who basically was kind of saying, "No, I don't want to be seen by a Muslim."
Well, that's racism.
And I think it's interesting, isn't it? It's so kind of how sometimes we will kind of it's difficult, isn't it?
Yeah. That's quite normal. That is quite normal. When my husband first started his job in '97 at the doctor's surgery, it was all white doctors, white British doctors. He's British as well, but obviously he's Asian. And half the patients left because they didn't want to see an Asian man. This is, I'm talking about Brentwood Village here, where, you know, the dynamics were very different in those days. And they left and went to the other white British doctor. So it's quite normal. It's less common nowadays, but some people will feel it inside but not say it that much because of all these laws which are out. But some people, they do often say it. But to be honest with you, it's silly because we're all living in a multicultural world, and it's really important to mix with everybody. No longer is it a world where you just get one type of person in a bubble and that's it. We're all humans, we all breathe the same air, you know, and we're all different, even if it's not different colours or religions, we're different from each other in so many different ways. And we can't clone everybody and make them all the same. The more tolerant we are, the better really, the more peaceful society we will be living in. They're different because they've got mental health problems to begin with, are they not, when they come to see you? So you're there to help them, not to make barriers really. You're there to help them, aren't you, with their problem, which is a very, very good job to do really, because you're gaining a lot of reward actually by helping them, you know. Anything else? We've still got 20 minutes. Did I cover the two things I spoke to you about? I can't remember. Hazel, I spoke to you about two things. One was the mindfulness. There was one more thing.
The psychologist and the mindfulness.
The psychologist, what, the video that I put up?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, shall we stop then if there's no more questions? I hope it's been useful.
If I had a specific clue, could we contact you?
Yes, you can, definitely, through Hazel. She's got my email address.
Yeah.
I'm willing to come to do any more training that you feel you need specifically. I could have done any other PowerPoints you needed. I've got everything on my laptop. If there is anything that you feel you needed more, or if you ever need anything in the future, I'm willing. I've got lots of hats, as you've seen, in different fields.
Are there any services for people who, obviously you've spoken a lot about kind of if someone is kind of being oppressed and things like that, then it's not really Islam.
Yes.
If we do come across people that are kind of feeling very kind of oppressed, or that they can't get out and be trapped, or I remember a case I had of a lady who had a boyfriend that was Muslim, and he'd been with them for like 2 years, but they hadn't been able to come to their parents.
Yes, because
Are there any kind of groups that kind of help people kind of thinking about when they come from a very traditional background perhaps, and they're trying to...
Not specifically, but you know now what's in the religion, so you can guide them, you see. So you know now that if a woman is oppressed, you can say to her that, hang on a minute, here's your leaflet, read this. You're not supposed to be oppressed according to your religion. You've got all these rights, and you need to talk to your husband or whoever it is who's oppressing you. So it's better coming from you rather than you sending them somewhere else. They're not more likely than to go to the other person. You see, it's losing the trail. Better that you do it. You see, so take whatever leaflets you want and use them. You can say, look, actually you shouldn't be oppressed, because I know, I've had training on Islam, and I know that you've got this right and this right and this right. And what your husband is doing is a man-made thing because he wants to be dominant over you. You will get people like that, because what I've told you is what's in the faith, and I'm not saying that not all women are oppressed, because some are, especially amongst the Bangladeshi community, especially. You get lots of women who can't speak English, and their husbands haven't let them out to go and learn English, because then they'll become more powerful. You do get that. You do. It all depends on what kind of background they're from, but the more educated they are, the more better they would be at letting their ladies go out and study and all that. The more they are from secluded backgrounds themselves, the more narrow-minded they will be. You see, like it is in our own culture here. If you're just in a village, small tiny little village, and don't mix with anyone else, you're going to have certain ideas, aren't you? Just a one-track mind. Whereas the more you travel, the more you meet other people, the more you expand, don't you? The more tolerant you are. Right, I'm going to stop now. And thank you very much for being a wonderful audience. You're all really intelligent, and you all really listened well, and I think you did really, really well.
Thank you.
You take whatever leaflets you want, because there's leaflets on both sides now.